Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Psalm 150 Talk Show. My name is John, aka The Blind Fury, and you can find me at www.theblindfury.com. Now, if you want a chance to be on this show, all you have to do is go to my website, click on the Psalm 150 Talk Show, pick out the artist that you want to talk to, and then join us on the date and time appointed. That's all there is to it. If you have any questions, drop us an email at psalm150@theblindfury.com. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Psalm 150 Talk Show. This is John, your host, aka The Blind Fury. And check out my website, www.theblindfury.com. Tonight, I can tell you for sure this is going to be entertaining. So I always enjoy telling little stories on my guests. And so this story isn't anything major, but I find it interesting because earlier in my years, when I was just learning about Christianity and all that, I'm a metalhead. I was raised on the Boston and Foreigners and Kiss and all of that, and which in those days, that was pretty heavy stuff. And when I started listening to Christian music as a youngster, there were only two bands that helped me be happy with my musical taste. And one was Petra and this other weird band called the Rez Band. So I listened to those two a lot because that's the only thing that really satisfied my taste in music. And so I went through my years, and it's kind of interesting because now we're joined by Mr. Glenn Kaiser from the Rez Band. And here's the cool thing. Everybody knows I'm legally blind. I made sure Glenn realized that and remembered it because of our conversations. He said, "Oh, it's cool. I know. I'm legally crazy." And so with that comment, I'm going to agree with him after our conversation and welcome Mr. Glenn Kaiser to the show. Glenn, welcome in.
Appreciate it. Hey, John. Hey, let's see. We got Les and David.
So far.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us what you're up to nowadays, Glenn, and we're going to let everybody jump in here in a minute.
Well, it's interesting. I understand that, COVID has taken a lot of lives. It really has, and changed everything in terms of people's ability to even get close to people. So as we all know, like we're doing right now, the web kicks in. And all of a sudden people are doing Zoom and Facebook Live and, concerts online and all the rest of it. I ended up doing ridiculous amounts of all of that. And I've been a chaplain for many years, working in Cook County Jail here in Chicago and in prisons all over the U.S., really, mainly in Illinois, here where I live, but also all over Ohio, up in Alaska, overseas, when I've done tours overseas. And Rez Band actually did a number of prison gigs for years in different places, as well as several times went into Cook County Jail with all of our gear. I did a number of solo shows there. I mean, we're talking way back. But the Lord opened more and more doors. Well, now those doors are closed. So I started doing DVDs. It's the only way, because of all the prison lockdowns and jail lockdowns, to be able to be with these guys, mainly men, who are incarcerated. So that's been a long road now for me for many years, but the pandemic just kicked that way up. So I've been doing tons of that. Redoing some books, The Responsibility of the Christian Musician, a little pamphlet that came before that. It was called Music, Musicians, and Ministry. I put those up online. I've been blogging for many, many years, so that's gone crazy. Worked on several books that are all in process. One right now is called Now What, which is really the first 9 months of my walk with the Lord, which was up and down for 9 months. I mean, very, very up, but also very, very down, like living in an apartment with my girlfriend. And it's pretty intense stuff. So I'm talking very openly and honestly about the temptations and the struggles that I had as a young Christian, and dealing with issues of the church. I've been a pastor for a lot of years, most of my life, really. Probably 4 years into Resurrection Band. I was prayed over and ordained as a pastor. And so I could go on for days about all the stuff that I do. Now, some of the fun stuff, which is part of what I do as well, as far as concerts and going into prisons and jails and all the rest of it. I was telling you about it earlier, John. I built diddley bows, and everybody's pretty much heard of Bo Diddley. That he just inverted the name, and it's a slang term for a one-string slide guitar. So I build them out of. I mean, I'll take a broom handle and a soup can, and put a guitar string on it, lift the string up off the neck, and play slide on it with a piece of glass or whatever. And it's just a simple way to play blues, and for me to share the gospel. So, I've been doing a lot of building of all kinds of stuff. So I've been tossing tons of that stuff up on my personal YouTube channel. And then there was Swamp Gas Messiahs, which was the latest album on our little in-house label here, Gurr Records, and what a job they did. And so that album is out, and then there's one coming right behind that. Once we can get everybody together to finish up, we want to have a B3 on some songs. Got to have that organ happening, and some background singers. A brilliant harp player, buddy of mine named Joe Falisco, blow some harp on some songs. And it's about half and half electric, full band, and about half stripped down acoustic. So there's some cigar box guitars and acoustic guitar, dobro. It's all blues, and it's lyrically straight up worship.
Awesome.
And very simplistic on purpose. And a lot of these songs I have sung off and on and led in prisons and in Cook County Jail for years. And I've written them all. They're all songs that I've written. I didn't do any cover songs. And that project will probably be called Ain't No Bars, and in parentheses, Around My Heart. And so it's, when people aren't going to necessarily, when they hear the lyrics, they're not going to necessarily go, prison, aimed at prisoners and people in jail. But that's really what inspired every single song on the album. Probably two of the songs are not call and response. All the rest of the songs, I think there's something like, 13, 14 songs. All the rest of the songs are written where I sing a line, they sing a line. They sing it back to me. I sing it, they repeat it. And so call and response, So that way, mostly you can't bring lyrics, printed pages or anything in when you, I'm pretty much dealing with, well, Cook County Jail is one thing, but most of the prisons I go into, John, I'm specifically focused, and I'm asking to be with max security men. I prefer max security men, and those are the people nobody really wants to deal with. And I think those are the people that, well, they remind me of how I was back in the day, only I didn't get caught.
Well, Glenn, we've got a few people in here, so let me go through the quick rules really fast. When we don't have large groups, I like to allow you guys to jump in when you want. Just make sure that you are respectful of the people next to you in the virtual room, and let those others talk as well. But feel free to jump in, ask Glenn any questions or make any comments you have, and let's just have a good time tonight. Glenn's I'm trying to get him to break out of his shell a little bit and start talking some more, so you guys might have to pull it out of him. So anybody wants to jump in? I know we have a couple of countries in here, Glenn. Somebody from Germany showed up.
Cool.
So anybody want to jump in really fast?
Hey, Glenn, this is Dave from Bardstown, Kentucky. How you doing?
Cool.
I've been friends with John a long time. Who inspired you to get into music? I like blues, like the Blues Brothers from back in the day. that, I really like them. And, there's a little bar up here called Stevie Ray's I've been to several times. And I was just curious, who inspired you to get into it?
Well, it goes real deep for me because my mom won singing contests when she was 18 years old, citywide in Milwaukee. Well, she smoked 3 packs a day after some years of that and blew her voice up. But I didn't know that till later on. There was always a piano in the house, usually out of tune, and she played it a bit. There was an accordion, Kaiser, right, with 98% German ancestry here, and so the music was around. And until years later, I didn't know that my dad had played soprano sax, straight sax, pardon me, in a dance band. If you remember way back when, you might be a little too young for this, but Fred McMurray, My Three Sons, an actor out of Hollywood, well, he was born in Beaver Dam, which is where I was born, which is where our family lived for some time, Wisconsin. My dad was in the same grade in high school, and he played in a dance band with Fred McMurray, doing jazz and dance music and whatever. But my old man also got involved in the early days of WWF, not really WWF, but like that. And he got his nose broken, had an accident, although they were faking it. He got messed up pretty bad. And the cartilage didn't quite get right for him. And so that ended his potential music career. But I had no idea about any of that till later. My brother and sister had a little phonograph, and back in the 45s, I don't think it even played LPs, full albums. Well, they had a few, Elvis Presley, I don't even remember what they were, the songs. And, whoever it was, early rock and roll, they probably had 3 or 4 records. I mean, we were dirt poor. And so music was in the house. Now, I'll tell you what, this gets pretty intense, but it's the truth. We were on welfare. My dad got sick. He had a tremendous job, kept getting promoted, got ill. We had nothing. He had 3 operations. We lost everything. So we're not black in the South. We're white in the North. And my daddy worked hard, but he couldn't. And all of a sudden, wife and 3 kids, he's in the hospital having the 3rd operation in a row, and boom. So it's hunt and fish up there for sport, but we were doing it for a living, pick berries, all that. So it got to a point where he went to work somewhere long hours and would only come home on the weekends. My mother left our little town, Fox Lake, Wisconsin, 1,181. I used to pass a sign every day, walking to school. My older brother and sister, I was the youngest of the 3 kids, they were out with their friends. My mom goes down to Milwaukee, comes home every 2 weeks for a day or 2. So I'm running around. Well, our house was up on a hill just outside of Fox Lake. And the last house I passed and the last street light at night, that house had been unoccupied for about a year before we moved in. And as I'm walking up the hill, I realized, why that house was unoccupied is because there was a pretty sad, very old lady living by herself, and she had hung herself. Mm-hmm. So I'm freaked out at the dark. I know nobody's in our house up on the hill, and about, a half a block away, and it's nothing. It's country, I'm walking up that hill and the last street light's fading as I'm walking toward our big dark house. And I got to pass by this empty house, that I'm freaked. I started singing. That's when I began to sing. And I literally would sing my way up the hill, feel around for the light. I'd open the door, just freaked out of my wits. I was always afraid of the dark. Pop on the light, shut the doors, sit down, and turn on the little black and white TV we had like 1 channel, and keep looking out the window, waiting for my brother or sister to come home to rescue me, But I would sing, and especially in the summers, they were out with their friends. Well, the words almost always, I don't even know. I just could rhyme. I rhymed them. And I got to tell you, I think God set me up from there on in. Now, when you're talking about musical influences, oh man, it's all over the map. Let's just say that for 3.5 years, I didn't listen to any white music. In my teen years, I got sick and tired of hearing people sound like they were trying to sell me something. And I literally said, if you don't believe it, why should I? And the singers on pop radio, top 40 radio in Milwaukee, about, I don't know, nine songs in a row, I just thought, I literally switched my transistor off and said, I'm done. I quit. Forget it. And a black radio station started up, a suburb over. It had about 500 watts daytime AM, And I mean, when those guys were singing, I could hear the sweat hitting their wingtips, man. It was like, my baby left me. Mercy, mercy, Lord. And I'm like, oh, God. Real deal. So you name it. Aretha Franklin, all the Motown stuff, all the Motown, Sam and Dave. I could go on for days. And then, of course, Albert King, B.B. King, Freddie King, all the blues and soul and R&B. I think the only white band they ever played was the Young Rascals, which was, that's kind of in the ballpark. And so as time went on, I would have to say Hendrix. That's literally what some guy in a radio interview said, what brought you back into white rock? I said, Jimi Hendrix, and he started laughing at me. And I'd never even thought about it. But, I wanted to hear gut, heart, integrity, regardless of the style, And that's still where I'm coming from. Later on, Rory Gallagher happened to be a white Irish blues rocker, but the man had a sense of vibrato on his guitar playing, feeling, passion, and probably didn't hurt that he had a three-piece group at first, because I fell very much in love with Hendrix, and then Cream, and Budgie, a Welsh three-piece group. The bass player, he was the lead singer and the key guy in the band, as a matter of fact, actually became a follower of Jesus. So a lot of interesting artists back that way. So many influences.
All
Thanks
right.
for answering my question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, I'm going to call out somebody really quick, because I know if I don't do it, they will not speak up, because every time I talk to this particular fella, he's like, well, I didn't want to get involved and take somebody else's time. So Lucas from Germany, it's your time. And then everybody else in here, you can take off after Lucas, but Lucas will not speak up unless I call him out.
Lucas, wie geht's, mein Bruder?
Hello.
Hello, Lucas. Was ist los?
Thank you, John, for this nice words.
Yes, sir.
And it's an honor to see Glenn Kaiser.
Welcome.
I remember about 30 years ago when you visited Germany on festivals, and I try to, if I remember right, I try to give you my pocket to my driving license to sign it. And I think you said, oh, you don't sign my driving license, and I gave you my pocket to sign it. I guess I still have it. So it's really nice.
Well,
and I was a teenager, and so Glenn Kaiser is a huge part of my teenage Christian life. And I remember you as a very good, convincing person.
Well, danke schön, meine Brüder.
Yeah. So an honor to see you, and I'm really happy inside. I was enjoyed it the whole day to see you.
Well, I'm blessed. I'm blessed with many good memories and many tours aus Deutschland, Europa, and I've really always. In fact, just today I was remembering a Christmas rock night.
Yes.
We played Rez Band played, I think, twice, maybe 3 times.
Yeah. Christmas rock night is the best place to be in Germany.
Yeah, wunderbar. And the Wald, the forest,
Yeah.
beautiful there.
Yeah.
Schön, Wald.
Perfect. So I try to talk English and you talk German. It's perfect.
Listen, kleiner Deutscher.
Very good.
So welcome, cool.
Thanks so very much.
Oh,
All right.
my pleasure.
So who's up next? Somebody jump in here.
Glenn.
Yes, sir.
My nickname's so dark and a handful. Can you share, did you have any good experiences with Ty Taylor of King's X? I think he produced your Lament album, and I was wondering if you ever got to meet Bono and The Edge from U2.
A mutual friend of Ty's, really the band, but King's X. But he kept saying, you know, Ty has begun to produce some records. And I know you guys, we had our own studio, and we still do, Tone Zone in Chicago. And he said, I wonder if you guys would be open for Ty to come up and maybe produce the next project. And I said, you know, it's funny you mentioned this, because from the very first, before we even recorded Awaiting Your Reply, you know, the first Resurrection Band album, there were 2 producers we had in mind. They were Jeff Mutt Lang
Oh, wow.
and Peter Grant. Well, you know, you can't hardly get AC/DC or Led Zeppelin's producers in. For one thing, they could have cared less about us lyrically because of our commitment to Jesus. But secondly, even if they would have looked past that, no way could we have ever afforded what the fee that they would have asked for. So our friend, Mark Hollingsworth, said, I'm going to contact Ty if you're open. So I brought it to the rest of the group. Everybody said, yeah, willing to have him come up. Why not? You know, King's X rocks, great sound and all the rest of it. And if he would be willing to do it, that would be pretty cool. Well, he was, and it was a lot of fun. It was really fun for he and Stu Heiss, our lead player, to be jamming together on the project. And his production concepts were fabulous. And he brought a dear friend with him that he did tons of engineering for King's X, and nicknamed Full Slab, because the engineer loved Chicago rib tips, man, and we'd get him a full slab of ribs. And we found out actually that was his nickname. They would constantly be hitting up all the rib joints in Houston, where they're from. So yeah, it was a lot of fun working with Ty. He was a very humble, very thoughtful guy. He got us out of the what I think was excessive, extreme reverb, which we had used on several albums in a row. So it brought the sound into the overall atmosphere of the record, and song for song, into a different, and I would have to say very powerful place. He also, at one point I thought, sure, I have got to fix this vocal that I sang. And I did this, I don't even remember which song it was now, on Lament, on that album. I remember going, that's a scratch track. That's a rough trade. He went, oh, no, you're not touching that. It's perfect. Like, Ty, no, you're killing me, man. And we had really, in retrospect, and actually A being Lament, as we were recording it, we'd put on the last 3 Rez albums before Lament, you know, and we'd A/B the sound that he was helping us to get to vocally, all of it, the performances, all of it, with those last 3 albums prior. It was where he took us for that album was fabulous. And that we all think that. We all thought that at the time. So, but it was interesting because I'm not Mr. Pristine, but we had gotten to the point where I might punch, not necessarily because I was wanted to either, by the way, but I might punch and fix 2 or 3 words in a phrase that I've sung. I might punch into that thing to try to get it exact 6, 7 times. I mean, it was ridiculous. And he was concerned that we would sterilize the track. And it was actually the humanness, the passion, the heart. And if it was slightly sharp, slightly flat, if it wasn't really completely flippin' horrid, let's live with it, and we might just keep it. And he was right.
Now, just a quick note, I had to mute you out, Tall, Dark, and a Handful. I forgot your name. I know you've been here before, but there was a lot of feedback. So if you have a follow-up comment or question, you'll have to unmute. Just letting you know.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Do you want, I think I read that Bono and the Edge met Jesus People USA. Do you have any stories about that?
Well, what happened is there was a point where we had a manager in-house who made it a point to try to get us in front of more and more university and college age kids and do some tours. Okay, DMA, which at the time major touring company for rock artists out of Detroit. For example, they were the company that toured Ted Nugent for quite a while. He hooked us up with them, and they were willing to go for it. And then I don't remember. I think it might have been him, but he tried to get a hold of the North American. This is not worldwide or anything else, but North American management company who worked with U2, and he did. And 3 of the key people from that company came to a show that we did. I think it was North Florida or something. I can't remember. Packed out, great audience. The band had a pretty good night, hotter than blazes. I remember that. I was standing in the shower by the end of the concert. We were soaked. But we talked about it, and they were hip to do it. And we amicably agreed, we're going to do it for 3 months, just 3 months. And you can do the management side. And we're working with DMA. You'll work with them. No problem. Good. And that's what we did. Well, after 3 months, we parted ways again, amicably. They were super encouraging. They really didn't try to change us in any way. Really showed us a lot of respect. We did a couple of tours all over the country, played a lot of shows and a lot of major rock halls and university concerts and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean, it was an interesting time, but that's it. I never met anybody in U2, didn't meet anybody from Ireland, any of that. It was a North American management. It was a 3-month deal.
I had to mute you out again there, buddy. Sorry. So we'll go back around. Does anybody else have any more comments or questions that hasn't spoken yet? If so, unmute and let him talk to you.
Just a short 2 words comment, because I had the privilege to write with Mr. Bill Glover from Petra, and I shall say hello from him to Glenn.
Hello back.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Les Miller, you're quiet.
I'm glad you called him out because I got in trouble last time I did it.
Well, I get in trouble on occasion, but I'm a pretty tough guy.
Yeah. It wasn't Les that I got in trouble with. I just happened to hear that me calling people out made them really nervous.
If you want to ask a question or say something, Les, pop your mic off. You've got it muted right now, so you'll have to unmute your mic or we won't be able to hear you. And if you just want to listen, that's cool. Anybody else?
I got a question. I got my headphones on, so that took care of the problem before.
Okay, cool. Thank
But
you.
is it tempting to write secular lyrics? Like, because it's like most Christian bands, they last like 2 albums and then all the members change. Like, it seems hard to make a living doing Christian lyric music. I mean, unless it's gospel.
Well, there's so many things I could say and answer. It's a great question. For one thing, there's nothing as a Christian, there's nothing in the scripture, in the whole of the Bible, that says this is the standard of living that's cool, that's kosher. You know, here's how much money you need to have. You shouldn't ever have a $50 Goodwill Salvation Army couch. You have to buy a $500 or $800 or $1,500 leather couch. And your whole you shouldn't drive a Trabi. I'm saying that for Lucas. You shouldn't drive you know, a beat up old car. You really need to have a really nice one. Let's say a Maserati. So what I'm trying to illustrate is there are standards of living that individual artists and or their spouse, their husband, their wife, you know, then what if they have 1, 2, 3, 4 kids? Well, obviously they have to make more money to live, to pay the bills, to render to Caesar. So part of the problem I see, and I've always thought this way, I'm thinking of Sean Connery in the Untouchables movie. What are you willing to do? If you're committed to Jesus Christ, A, as a believer, as a follower of Jesus, and B, if you're committed to making genuine, honest art, and I mean any art, as a musician, dancing, painting, photography, sculpture, whatever it is you do, a writer, you know, whatever you do, an author, then you have the standard of living that you choose. You also have a standard of living that, depending on where you live, it is cheaper to live in Florida most of the time than it is to live in,
New York,
up north in Wisconsin, in a large city, whatever. The standard of living, the weather isn't as intense as you go further north, as you go further south. It can still be horrible and very intense, but it just costs less, largely. So there's all that practical stuff that figures into when you talk about making a living. And so whether or not somebody chooses to live in a particular place, there's so many reasons why they do or don't. You know, my wife's family lives there. We're taking care of my grandmother. She's living in our house, you know, whatever. We have to have this. We have to have a Mercedes van. I mean, a really nice, you know, it's going to cost a whole lot more than some beat up Chevy van, you know. How about touring? There was a guy who shall remain nameless. Rez Band did a number of tours in Australia, and a promoter there that worked with us many times, who truly respected this Christian artist. He put him up in a 5-star hotel, and this guy complained. In a 5-star hotel. I mean, this is crazy. We would stay in people's homes because we chose to. That doesn't mean we're necessarily more godly or holy or virtuous or something, but it's just, My wife and I live in one room. We've never lived in more than one room our entire married life. Our kids have adjoining rooms. We live in community. We share food and finances and cars and all the rest of it. I'm completely weird. I don't even come close to the average Christian in this country, in America. To be blunt, that's not my call to keep up with whatever the Joneses are doing is up to them, between them and God. But for me, living a simple life and cutting costs, and thank God I married a woman who has the same heart after God and the same commitment to following Jesus. So she doesn't care about the latest, greatest, best anything. So we've lived a very, very Spartan, simple, basic life compared to a lot of believers in the Western world, Western countries. Well, I don't know if a lot of Christians are willing to do that. I don't know if a lot of families are willing to do that. So now you get into the area of gospel music, lyrically, something where there's a bit of a witness for Jesus, a biblical viewpoint. You use a word or two here and there that are a little more out front, overtly biblical or Christian or Christ-centered, right? Versus not. There are things in the Bible that very few Christians seem to bother to study enough to even be aware of, and even Christian musicians. 340 verses in the Old Testament and 40 in the New that speak specifically to music. Several books of the Bible, the biggest book of the Bible, Psalms, 150 lyrics. But there's also a song called The Bow. We don't have all the lyrics from it, but we have enough to have a sense of what's going on. David writes a song about his friend Jonathan, who's been killed. There's no mention of God or spirituality in the song, of the lyrics that we do have, that are there in the scripture, in the Old Testament. So I think the issue is integrity. I think it is Jesus says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So the writer writes, the singer sings, the lyricist writes lyrics, texts of the songs. You make choices on what you're willing to sacrifice for the sake of the Lord and people, and even to have integrity in your art, in what you're saying, and whether it's lyrics, music, performance, on stage, recording, whatever. Nobody puts a gun to your head and says, you have to sign this contract. You make decisions. It's on you, Bubba. See, so it's on the guy, the lady, the band, the management, the agent. All of these people are making decisions where everything I just said, figures in. Making a living. My friend John Fisher, who wrote one of the best things I ever saw in CCM magazine back in the day, which some of it was quite good, and some of it to me was useless. But what John wrote almost always was fabulous. And I'll never forget this. At one point he wrote, I about fell off my chair. He wrote about the Christian music scene. He said, we used to make history, now we're making a living. What he meant was, there was a time we cared more about serving God and people. And now our focus is on the money and living a comfortable life. And I know John, he's still at it. He wasn't slamming quote unquote secular lyrics. All truth is God's truth. I just think some people are willing to compromise to be more comfortable. And who am I to judge? I'm not God. I'm not the Holy Spirit. Last time I checked, nobody I know is except God. So it's not my job to be judge of other Christians or unbelievers, but they're whatever. We've all sinned and fallen short, right? So, to me, I would rather err in grace. Mm-hmm. You didn't ask for all that, but believe me, I've been thinking about this stuff for a lot of years, and I've seen a whole lot of people blow up spiritually because they got concerned about making a buck, or I don't know. We have to be ever more popular. Really?
Yeah.
Why? Why? Right now, Tall, Dark, and Handful, Lucas Jacoby, David Moore, John Helton, and Les Miller are more important to me than whether or not, I don't know, what my ASCAP royalties were last month. I don't, which, by the way, I hand over to Grow Records voluntarily so that they can continue to do what we do in ministry. Listen, unbelievers, full-on atheists, have suffered and sacrificed, eaten garbage for food in cold water flats in France for the sake of artistic integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and they died young. I have more respect for that person any day of the week than for people who whine and carry on about not getting the opportunities and the breaks. Scripture says a man's gift will make room for him and bring him before great men. We don't have to make room for our gifts. We don't have to beat the doors down. We have to be honest before God and others as followers of Jesus. Okay, there you go.
Well, it's almost like you're a pastor or something, like you've preached before.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, it's just a hunch. I can't put a finger on it.
Most of my life. Uh-oh. Les has got his Rez jersey on. What is the matter with you?
Hey, I just came from my first year eating of Thai food. I had pad Thai, okay, wearing my Rez shirt, okay? Yeah. And I'm okay with being anonymous, okay? Just listening to you, Glenn, that's all I need.
Well, Les, bless you. If you got any questions or thoughts,
Oh, man, I got a ton of questions.
well, shoot. Toss a couple up.
I can't think of any right now. I'll remember them, later on. I know there's no chance of a Rez reunion, but I'm not going to bother you with that.
Now, where are you at in the country?
Oh! I'm where I can't get any of the musicians to come down here. You played here one time, and Dean told me that they pulled the plug on you. Okay, this was of a seed thing back in the 70s, early 70s. The guys, they pulled the plugs on everything. And Dean told me that Wendy cried, about it, but I live here in the Fort Lauderdale area, and going to Cornerstone was it. I was in heaven,
Oh, thank you,
all
bro.
the fans that I had gotten their records, okay, back then it was records, albums, LPs, and I listened to them, and finally I get to see Undercover. Finally I get to see 77s and all those good ones. I was at the first Place, and I was all over the place. So it was great for me, and like I said, he called me out, so I came on, and I'll just go back to my being anonymous. But I appreciate everything you've done for me here with Rez Band and your solo.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Les. One of the coolest things ever, for years people would say, oh man, you're going out. Have fun. And I'm like, thank you. I mean, that's not why I do it. But yeah, it's cool. I love people. And I also love places. I love seeing different Iceland. Man, if God didn't care, I'd be living in Iceland. I love the woods. I grew up in the country in the middle of nowhere. I'm as happy as can be in the middle of nowhere as I am in the inner city, as I am in a jail or a prison, by the way. So far, so good. They let me go home after every gig, But meeting people, every kind of person all over the country. I remember one time in the middle of Illinois, which a lot of Illinois is flat as a pancake, man, just nothing but corn. And there was this little town. I don't remember the name of it. I mean, this is years ago. And they said, you can't bring a lot of gear. And this town, I kid you not, it had about 6 or 7 houses and a couple of stores in the middle on 2 sides of one street. So 12, 14, 15 buildings. That's it. Corn. Flat, nothing. Hardly any trees out there, anything. It seemed like we drove 8 or 10 miles of nothing before we got there. We pull up, we walk in. It's an old building, really old. These old wooden floors, and like where I was a kid growing up in Wisconsin in the country, pressed tin ceilings. They would have like, you've seen them probably in some old houses. They had these presses way back in the day. I mean, this building we walked in probably was, gosh, it would have been 100 years old or 80 years old, which Lucas, that's old for us. And walk in and they have one bare light bulb. And they got a couple of folding chairs. And there's people in farmers, man, in overalls, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know, 15, 18 people, something like that. So I had this little pig nose amp, little battery powered amp. We brought the electric guitar in and the pig nose. We brought in a bass amp. I think John actually brought a conga drum or bongos. I can't remember. So Wendy and we all walked in. We sat on chairs. We just kind of sat in a circle. And we did the most goofy, crazy, stripped down how do you play Rez Band electric music like this, But we did it anyway. And their response, it was just like, it was amazing. And so I meet people all over the world. And I've never cared how many people show up. I never have. But getting to talk with folks like yourself, getting to interact, find out where they're from, how they grew up, what's happening in their life. And then people start often, not always, of course, but often, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of struggle, addiction, which is what I came out of before I was a Christian, and the people losing their friends, their loved ones, somebody overdosing, a husband or a wife passing away, dying, all these things. So from the very beginning, those kind of conversations would happen. And that's what sticks out to me, the beauty of being able to travel. Now, traveling in and of itself, it's cool. But, how many times I've said, boy, do I have to get on another airplane and fly? Yeah, I want to go to another airport. I can tell you what airports all over the world look like, But it's like, so what? It's like, and then people will say, oh, stick around for a couple of days and, we'll take you out. You can go fishing, whatever it is, 55 things. I'm so burnt out at the end of a tour. I just want to come home and sleep for a couple of days. You know what I mean? And it's just because you just, but it's people like yourself. And you saw that at Cornerstone. I mean, that festival was one of the greatest. To me, it was always like Christmas in July. And for us at Jesus People to be able to do that festival, and introduce so many people to musicians and speakers and ideas that often the church doesn't even want to think about or talk about, you know. I mean, where else could you find a serious scholarly Jew and a serious committed Christian Palestinian talking about the issues on a panel discussion, not killing each other, and then being able to have Q&A discussions in the grass, sitting out there on the, you know, in the field next to the tent for another hour with 50 or 60 fest goers, and really hash over whether you agreed or disagreed. We're going to talk about the stuff. We're going to deal with the issues that sometimes the church just doesn't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was one of the greatest blessings of the festival. Of course, all the bands and the fun and the, you know, canoe races and all of it, you know, all of it, the film festivals and all of the art, the fine art work. Oh my goodness. The kids programs, incredible times of worship all over the place. Yeah. Cornerstone was a trip, a gift, about 28 years.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. I have two great Cornerstone memories because I only went to two. But the first one, Glenn, you'll enjoy this, and I'll have to thank you for this. I told you I'm going to drive to your house. When I was a fairly new Christian, my dad told me about this huge music festival in Chicago. And I was like, that's cool. So he actually encouraged me to go. So I worked on that day and then decided to drive up through the middle of the night.
Ugh.
All I knew, now at this point, I'm 21, 22 years old. And I'm thinking, you know, I could drive through the middle of the night because I'm a superhero. So I drive. All I knew about Cornerstone is that it was in Chicago. So I get to Chicago, I get off the exit, wrong exit to take, and I go in this place in the middle of the night. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't really nervous, but I walk in and I asked the lady if she ever heard of the Cornerstone Festival. Well, she starts asking other people, and I'm like, you know, I should be within 30 minutes or so. And she said, oh yeah, Cornerstone Festival. It used to be here, but they've moved it to this place. I went, how far is that? Now, Glenn, you'll have to tell me. I was like
4.5 hours.
That's what they said. 4 hours. I went, say what? 4 hours. Did I hear you say 4 hours? So I'm like, oh, what the heck? So I jump in my truck and I take off, and I finally get there. I'm coming after you, Glenn, for changing that on me. It was the first year that it was moved.
We let everybody know. We publicized the daylights out of it.
Rabbit John.
So I do get there. Hang on, somebody jumped in here. Let me let them in real quick. So I get to Cornerstone that morning. Tourniquet was there. And when of course, I was a young Christian and all of that. That's when Psychosurgery came out. And
Sure.
I can't remember which member it was that signed my cassette. I was asleep, but the band I was in at the time knew I was a huge Tourniquet fan, so they went and got it signed for me. I think it was Guy Ritter. You should go listen. You should go listen to Insomnibilism or whatever the name of that song was, talking about sleep and all of that, which I thought was funny because I was asleep when they did it for me. The bed of the truck was my bed and it was so hot that day. I have a picture of myself and Roger Martinez, and I had a gray shirt on and you could just see the sweat. Then 2007 was the last time I attended, and my band actually played there. We played at the Sanctuary stage.
Yeah.
And right after us was a band called Breaking the Silence, who is now the Letter Black.
Yeah.
And then Seventh Seal ended the night. And I've always been a fan of those guys. So it was fun. We played 2 sets up there. And here's what was so funny, Glenn. As a drummer who did not use a metronome, I was walking on stage for the first set that we played. Or maybe it was the second one. It was the second one. I'm in my head just kind of getting mentally prepared, like, calm down, just play, don't get excited. So I intentionally played slower.
Oh,
And when I watched the video, I was like, oh my word, I should have learned how to use a metronome out in the field somewhere because, oh my gosh. And the bad thing is I jumped in a beat early and never even knew it. I got so excited about playing that show.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I'm going to have to, I don't know. I'm going to have to get you back for moving the festival on me without telling me that night. That was a long drive.
Oh, yeah, I guess, eh? Now there's a W5 GMD.
Yes, just entered the show. If you want to talk, you have to unmute.
Hey, I'm going to go into anonymous again. Okay, I just want to listen to the whole thing. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch all that.
That was very muffled.
Sorry about that. I'm just
Sorry.
going to go into anonymity again. Okay, but keep on talking. I love it. Thanks.
Bless you, Les.
Yes.
W5 GMD, are you there?
I think that was W5, wasn't it? I think that's the guy that just wants to be.
No,
Oh, I'm
that
sorry.
was Les. Ah, here he is.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you got a great radio voice.
Thank you. Gosh, I remember the first time Resurrection Band
Yeah.
Yep.
came to Houston, and you have to remember this was a long time ago. I was a teenager, and it came to a small church, wooden pews, and I want to say it was in Pasadena, Texas. And that concert actually changed my life as a teenager. It really did. I remember you spoke after the concert, or maybe even in between songs, I don't remember. And I to this day, I'm 60 years old now. Now remember, this was when I was a teenager. I remember to this day what your sermon was. You said, it's time to make Jesus your Lord. I know you've made him your Savior, but now you need to make him the boss of your life. I don't know if you remember that sermon or not, or maybe you've done that sermon in other words.
The reason I remember it is because I preach it all the time. Well, in one sentence, right? Jesus is not a smorgasbord. I take what I want, and I walk right by the rest.
That's right.
He's who he is. Lord, Savior, best friend, first love. He's everybody and everything that we need. He's God in the flesh. And when the Father sent his Son and the Son sent his Spirit, it was for keeps and the whole enchilada, the whole 9 yards. There it is.
Yeah.
And of course, even to this day, I'm still listening to Rez and Resurrection Band music. Anytime I'm down, I put on your music and tell you, oh gosh, I mean, I don't know. I know the Bible says you're not supposed to look back because you'll turn into a pillar of salt. But I tell you, I'm looking back with joy. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that so much. You know, Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. And as you know, if you followed me any other way or for any other reason, that's not a good thing. But at the end of the day, it's really about our reflection of Jesus. I mean, none of us are perfect at it. We all sin. We all make mistakes, both sin and make mistakes as followers of Jesus, as Christians. I don't care how virtuous anybody is or how much fruit of the Spirit any of us truly has coming out of our lives. It's the punchline here is that we all sin and we all make mistakes. And so the issue is, how can we best reflect the Lord? And that, whether you're behind a mic or, you know, keyboard or guitar or drum kit, you know, whether you're a checkout person at Walmart, I mean, you know, how can we best reflect Jesus? How can we best be a light that shines in a dark place? And that doesn't mean obnoxious, you know, rude, nasty. But I mean, I realized early on, one of the things we talked about earlier, John and I, working on several books, and one of them is called Now What? And it's about the first 9 months of my walk with the Lord. And those first 9 months, you know, half the time getting high and sleeping with my girlfriend in an apartment downtown Milwaukee. And the other half the time I'm reading scripture and I'm preaching the gospel. I mean, which I really believed, really believed then. And back and forth, because I was an addict. I'd come out of addiction and I wasn't completely out of it yet. You know what I mean? Some things immediately, boom, but some things hung on and hung on and hung on. My dream had been to live. Well, I was right to the edge of shooting heroin when I got saved. I mean, I hated needles, but I'd gotten to the point I thought, well, I might as well just start running them up because I've done everything else. And it was either that or move to Holland, find a hash bar in Amsterdam and just smoke my brains out until I passed out and had a heart attack. You know, I mean, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. I mean, that, so for my life to be changed like it was, part of it was realizing that I could not simply, it's like saying Wendy, my wife, now we're coming up on 49 years of marriage in June. What is she, my cook? Mother of our kids? She's my wife because the ink's dry and up at the courthouse in Wisconsin. And yeah, 49 years ago, right? We signed it. But it would be like, well, I only commit adultery every now and then. Huh? And then you call that a marriage? If Jesus is Lord, he's Lord.
Dude, that's good.
That means I'm no longer God. I'm no longer Lord of my own life. And that to me is maybe, well, it's certainly one of the major issues as to why individuals blow up spiritually, mess up. I don't mean blow up in the new terminology, the new slang vernacular of blowing up is a good thing. I'm talking about crash and burn spiritually. A whole lot of folks do that because Jesus isn't first.
Yep.
He's really not even second or third in their life. We used to say, us old hippies back in the day, we'd say, you don't add Jesus to your bag. He's the whole bag. He's the whole thing, man.
We're going to have to pass around an offering plate here in a minute, Glenn.
Well, there you go. Other questions? Thanks for reminding me, John. David?
Yeah, I've got one. I'll give you a little part of my testimony. I was abused as a child. Was married. We adopted a little girl, and the family sued us to take her from us. We lost everything we owned. My son was born with half a heart. I almost killed myself. And I write poetry to help ease the pain, I guess, of my past. And so do you find yourself when you're writing lyrics, writing lyrics from your past as well as your testimony in your music, or do you pull from other things?
Well, both ways. Sure. I write from the beginning. I wrote double entendre. So often when I would write a lyric, a phrase, several phrases, I would be thinking as a believer and as an unbeliever. I would be talking often about my life, but I would also be talking maybe about someone else that I'd met, an experience I'd had in conversation and getting to know another person's life and their story. And sometimes I wrote a song called The Chair that Rez Band did years ago. That actually came from a concert that we did in Sacramento, where at the end of the night, a guy came up. I couldn't see him. We would typically either go out into the crowd, like Wendy and I would be, I don't know, two seats apart, sitting right in the seats, and ask people to come talk to us, and the whole band. Or we would sit at the edge of the stage and spread out just about, that far apart, each of us. And then people would come and talk. We'd talk, pray, sign autographs, whatever. But usually a lot of conversation and prayer, and people would be confessing stuff. And what do I do in this situation? Well, that night at that show, we played that particular place a few times. The stage was high enough, and there were enough people that came forward after. Probably, I don't know, a couple hundred people wanted to talk to us afterwards. It was a packed out room. Well, he's in a wheelchair, so he's too low for me to see him. No, we couldn't see him, and he wanted to talk to me. So he waited. He had to have waited for 40 to 45 minutes. I felt so bad. When I finally saw him, I said, guys, we need to part the Red Sea a little here. Let this bro come up, because it's getting later in the evening. A lot of people that have disabilities that are in a situation like that really need to get their rest and get home earlier and so on. And I just felt so bad that he waited all this time. The punchline is, this guy was a brilliant man. I think he had just come up with a master's degree, drooled a bit, shook uncontrollably. I think he had the use of one or two of his fingers on a little thingy, electric thing on his wheelchair. And we had a really nice chat. I prayed with him, gave him a hug. In the van, going from the venue to the hotel that night, I wrote the chair, in my mind at least.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I got in there, I grabbed a hunk of paper and started writing the lyrics. This man may never get married, never have a family, kids, grandkids, whatever normal life is, whatever the opportunities, so-called healthy people have. People don't want to get near him because they're afraid of him. They don't know what to do with a visibly, physically ill or different person, whatever the difference it might be. This might be about anything from disability to race to educational status, what side of the tracks, economics, the haves and the have-nots, the people that financially are doing well, those that aren't, formerly incarcerated people. I mean, so I've written those sorts of songs for years, but that song was about somebody from his viewpoint. Because that song wouldn't be written. Who's going to write that song? Who's going to write a song like that and sing it in a rock band?
Well, I have a chair, so I'm definitely going to go listen to it.
Thank you. Well, it's just, we don't put ourselves in the mind or the heart of the other person. And so I write that way, but I also write, of course, from my own personal experiences, personal. It all goes in there. And in lyrics, that I write. And also, like I said earlier, double entendre. Broken Promises on the first Rez album. I wasn't up to here in sin at the time when I was writing that song. I wasn't thinking about ways that I failed God, areas, and I do all the time. I was writing about a mindset of a person who had known God, but who had backslid and fallen away. And countless people like that are in the church. Some of them are the pastors, the preachers. And then there are people that don't know the Lord at all, never have, never had anything to do with Christianity or the church or whatever. But they've made commitments that they've messed up. They didn't follow through. They've broken promises. Promises have been broken toward them, but they've broken promises, And the first, okay, John, here it comes. The first sermon Jesus preached, the first sermon Paul preached, or right near the first, and the first sermon that Peter preached, repent and believe. Not believe, repent.
Yep.
Turn, rethink. You're going the wrong way. So Broken Promises, I wrote as much for the church as for the non-churched you know, pre-believers or, you know, unbelievers. And, you know, all I can say is I do a lot of thinking and a lot of praying. I do a lot of reading, especially of news. I mean, broad. I got into shortwave radio when I was a kid. I poured over encyclopedias before there was such a thing as the internet. Other cultures, other customs, other ways of thinking about things. All the English language broadcasts from all over the world on shortwave. I was a whack, weird kid, man, and growing up. Well, why do people treat people like they do? Why all the war? And of course, years later, I read in James, from whence come wars and fightings among you, come they not hence even of your lusts at war and your members. Sorry, I memorized it in King James a long time ago. And it's just, yeah, boom, hello, you know, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel.
Mm-hmm.
So try to put yourself in the other person's mind, the other person's heart. But then, because I'm a believer, Jesus says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The writer writes, the lyricist writes the lyrics. So there's that juxtaposition for me always. I think as a Christian, I think throughout the whole of Scripture about the issue, whatever the issue might be that I'm dealing with. That's thorough. That's like the air I breathe, you know.
Mhm.
And then human experience, mine or someone else's. And if I can put that across from my heart, and if I can sing it with passion and conviction, I mean, like, I mean this. I'm not just throwing it out there. I mean this. And I very much want the connection between that individual and God, and between myself and the person who's hearing that song, hearing that lyric, hearing me or my wife or whoever singing it. You know what I mean? If I can put that across, man, that's at the very least, if I can't lead you to Jesus, I'm going to reflect him and hopefully the mind of Christ about the issue. That's my
Be an
desire.
example.
That's my heart.
Awesome.
Yeah, nobody does lyrics like that anymore. There is no band, no Christian artist that does lyrics like that anymore. Sorry, guys, that I didn't get my camera working, but I've got another testimony about when I was young and I was working in the cable TV warehouse. We were putting together cable assemblies, and they were playing their rock music. I was the only Christian there in the warehouse, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put my music on. And of course, you know, the guys were, you know, cussing and all that, and
Right.
you know, telling bad jokes and all. And so I put my music on, and the song comes on. It's called "Every Time It Rains," and that song went through, and I turned it up. And right as the song was ending, I looked over at one of the guys, the biggest cusser in the warehouse. He had tears in his eyes. And he excused himself to go to the bathroom. And I didn't know what to say. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't even talk, seeing tears in this big guy's eyes from that song. I mean, nobody does lyrics like that anymore, I'm sorry to say.
You know, I cuss like a pirate, right? Continuously with my friends, never in front of my mother. And the two of us lived together. My sister was gone. My parents got, you know, she divorced him, and my older brother was in the army over in Germany. My sister had married essentially to get out the house. And I was at one of the lowest points of my life. And I don't even remember, I might have lost a guitar pick in the couch cushions or something. I don't know. Something really nothing. And I got so angry, so mad. I was mad at the band I was in. I was mad at my girlfriend. I was mad at the world. I was just so angry. I started throwing stuff around the front room, around the front room, living room. and swearing my brains out. And my mother comes home from work a little early. She walks in the house, and I just kept going. I didn't stop. And she walks in the door and looks at me like, what has happened to you? You know, and I just kept on, F this, blah, blah, blah. I'm just, yeah, you know, throwing stuff and going nuts. She turned around and walked right out the door, got in her car and drove off. That was so unlike my mother. I guarantee you, never. I mean, just, she was tough as nails. She would have usually read me out, man. She would have gotten in my face. She's freaked. She didn't know what to do. When I finished my complete tantrum meltdown, no exaggeration, this is the story behind that lyric, that song, Every Time It Rains. I walked to the front windows, and it had been, I'm not kidding you, maybe one little cloud in the sky, maybe. Blue, 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 sun shining. I had the curtains drawn. I almost always had them drawn when she wasn't around. I had them closed. Kept the place dark and cranked on Zeppelin, you know, whatever. At that point in my life, I'd come back out of black music into intense rock. And anyway, I was so angry. And I remember I broke down and started crying. Well, I almost never cried. I mean, it really took a lot for me to break down. And I was so proud. Think about this. There's nobody in the house but me. And I'm so arrogant, I'm so proud that I'm ashamed at myself that I'm crying and I can't stop crying. That's a train wreck, buddy. That's a mess. I walk up to the front window and I literally screamed out of nowhere. I mean, we didn't go to church. We had nothing to do with church. God, Jesus, none of it. I screamed, if you even ever existed, you never cried for me. And I sat there, right, standing there. And all of a sudden I hear something. Within a minute or two. No, had to be about a minute, under 2 minutes. And I'm staring there just, you know, shirt wet from tears, and I can't stop. I can't control it. I'm like, what am I hearing? I walk up and I pop the drapes, and the sky is black. And I mean, it is pouring rain all over my front lawn. And I'm standing there, and boom, back in my head, what I had just said.
That's almost just comical because that's just how he works.
I mean, what do you do with that? What am I supposed to do?
You write a song.
You can intellectualize. You can Christopher Hitching me from here to kingdom come. What do you do if that sort of thing happens? And that stuff got that for me. If I was always ripped, if I'd always been on acid, always been high all the time, every time God did something like that with me, that'd be one thing, right? Completely straight, totally sober, hadn't done dope in at least a week or two. I mean, and a lot of times, God just showed up in such a way before I came to know him. It was so intense. But that's where that lyric came from that you hear as Every Time It Rains. I love rain. I can't, and I always, you know, he's relentless.
Yes.
And he knows exactly how to get your attention.
Yep. I actually have a book that I'm currently writing that has a similar type of theme behind it.
Yeah.
And it has to do with my now wife. And I say that because my former wife passed away. And so that's what my current book's about. Stop Your Whining, Legally Blind with 20/20 Vision. It's about losing vision and losing a spouse. And then when I met my now wife, Tanya, I actually was seeking God, and I was reading, and it's just too long of a story to get into, and I don't want to take up any time. But all I will say is this: when I needed God to talk, he did it. And it
Yeah.
was to the point where the story was so amazing. Even the night before we got married, something so crazy happened that we sat in the car and just were like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
I mean, it's just like, there's just no way that our dating time could be scripted the way it was scripted in the natural. It was, and people,
Yeah.
you'll see it in my book, my current book. People love to explain away God's gifts to you. They just love to explain it away because that can't be God. That's just ironic. That's just life. Give me a break. He is so detailed. I have two human science arguments that I love to use about people and not really believing. First of all, does anybody in here know how many miles of veins we have in our bodies? A normal average sized human being, how many miles of veins? Anybody?
I don't.
I've had guesses of 1,000. I've had 10,000. Try this. See, I have a hard time rolling up a water hose. In the adult human body, there are approximately 100,000 miles of veins. The smallest artery in the body is a seventh of the size of a human hair. Are you telling me there's not a creator? Here's the other one that kills me. A baby, when it's born, only has like 300 and some odd bones. But when the baby grows up, there's only 200 and something. Or is that reversed? I think I got that reversed. That's right. I reversed it. 200 and some odd bones.
No, you had it right.
I had it right.
They fused
Yeah,
together.
I had it right. Yeah. Yeah, it had 300 some odd bones because God was so brilliant in his design that the bones were actually, there were more bones, so there would be more flexibility for the baby to be able to come out of the womb. Then those bones fuse together as you grow. What?
Well, my nickel has always been, let's say there was a big bang. I know who made it bang.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, okay. Yeah. I mean, all we can do is discover what he has done.
Yep.
And we only get bits and pieces of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And tons of it's theory and theoretical on our part. I go back to Paul in 1 Corinthians a lot. I have in part, we have in part. Every individual only has partial knowledge, partial revelation about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And at the present time, we put us all together. Partial, at the present time, partial knowledge, partial understanding, partial revelation. Man, there ought to be a heck of a lot more humility among us all, and including Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that we sometimes, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I mean, nobody said it better.
Paul was a brilliant writer.
Oh, God help us. God help us. And God help us to spend more time studying what he had to say. Is there other questions?
Yeah, I got a question for you. Back to your songwriting. One that I always comment on when somebody plays Every Time It Rains, I just put down every time it rains, there's tears in the rain. I like that song, Tears in the Rain. But anyway, Glenn, I got a question for you. Is there any way you can incorporate American Dream into your blues?
I didn't catch all of that last sentence.
Is there any way to incorporate American Dream into your blues shows?
American Dreams into a blues?
I doubt it.
I know it's a little tricky.
I mean, yeah, I hear you, but it's, man. I mean, I pretty much in my mind hear that song like we did it.
Favorite Rez song.
No, thank you. Well, thanks. No, yeah, I get it, and it would be tempting to try. That's when you think about it. That's one of those lyrics.
It's more
Well, that's one of those lyrics it's an up-tempo song that, I mean, it's really up-tempo. And there are so many lyrics being spit out so fast. It's just really, it's overloaded in words, like I am. and actually it reminds me, in that principle of that is the same with Autograph. Autograph was just crazy for poor Wendy to have to sing because of all of the words, trying to phrase them together with that really intense up-tempo music. So that kind of stuff doesn't, in my mind, it's hard to translate to blues.
Okay.
Plus, I think a lot of Rez's lyrics, I have to admit, blues can be good poetry, good lyrics, artistically speaking. And really, I don't even just mean good. I mean pithy, more depth, more articulate. But usually blues lyrics are a little more direct and a little more basic English. And some of those songs and concepts like American Dream, woo, there's some pretty intense statements being made with all of those lyrics. And so I think some lyrics, rock, even full on blow your brains in rock, is a better music bed for that sort of more intense poetry and lyricism, often, not always, but often, than is blues. So I don't know about making the translation all the time. David, you went sideways for a minute.
Yeah. I fell over.
He's a
You can do
weeble
that.
wobble.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So we're running up on our time. Glenn, do you want to let them make one more quick comment or anything? Or
Yeah.
do you,
Anybody have
Okay.
anything else?
yeah, something really quick. If you want to
I
say
just
one
want to
more
thank
thing.
you for your
Crucified
time
sitting
tonight.
there.
I'm going for Tall, Dark, and Handful. Go for it.
All right.
The crucified singer Mark Solomon, he wrote a book that a lot of pastors were just saying that just the beat was satanic, even if it was overt lyrics. I mean, have you noticed that there is a big problem with getting venues of Christian churches that would allow you to play?
Rez Band, I don't remember Resurrection Band ever being turned down by anybody. But then we didn't knock on doors. Neither does Glenn Kaiser Band or me solo. I'm gonna say we did things a little differently than a lot of bands. And one of those things is if you didn't contact us to invite us to do a gig, or maybe you were a tour manager in Europe, you already lined up the concerts. So then you come, we talk about it. Are you serious? And are these venues and these local promoters serious? Then we made the commitment, and then we went and did the tour. We never knocked on doors. We never tried to get gigs, you understand? Very different from most musicians. Very different. And to this day, I mean, if I was already going to be in an area because somebody contacted me, if I had 2 other or 3 other contacts in that same region, that same area, or if they always said, and they said once, twice, 3 times more, hey, we'd love to have you in. We'd love to have you come. Well, then I'd get a hold of them and say, okay, well, so-and-so's having us here. We're going to be in Dayton. Do you want us to come to Columbus? Do you want us to come to Cleveland? Y'all have contacted us before. What's this look like? Can these dates work? So even then, we didn't cold call. We didn't knock on somebody's door looking for a gig. You understand? Very unique. So even the Christians, like many times I'd have a pastor sitting next to me in a chair going, just before we were going to get up to play, go, I don't understand what you guys are, or I don't like what you're doing, but I really appreciate what he meant was he knew I was going to preach. He knew this place is packed out tonight. I mean, there were places they would have never had us. In South Africa, we did a full-blown tour, all the major capitals, a lot of shows. We had to drag, I mean, literally force, make noise at our white concert promoters to go into Soweto and Alexandra. They had never, biggest church in South Africa, 5 minutes from Soweto. They'd never gone into Soweto. They didn't know anybody in Soweto. And we had friends that we had talked to, written, they'd smuggled our albums in when they were banned in the apartheid era. So there were situations where we believe God wanted us to be a catalyst. You know what I mean? And, but no. So there were people that would go, I don't like what you do, but it sure seems to work, or, you know, whatever. And I'm like, if you really think we're wolves in sheep's clothing, what are we doing in your church? Mm-hmm. And I would ask that question, not quite that bluntly, but if you really are wondering where we're coming from, and you think what we're doing is wrong and sinful, not scriptural or something, why are we here? Why are we here? Is this just, fill the joint and make money or something? What? So I never let that slide when I thought that might be what was. I mean, I could care less. I mean, I'm not for sale. I'm not for sale. And Rez Band was never for sale. And I won't play those kind of games with people. So I think they need to figure it out. What are we here for? Do we really love people? Do we love the Lord? No, the folks that thought we were nuts rarely talked to us directly. And when they did, and somebody said something about Satan, I've prayed for deliverance for people. You want to talk about demons? You really want to talk what the scripture says? You want to know what I've been doing off and on for years? That's a conversation nobody wants to have, right? So if you really want to talk about satanic, we can have that conversation. But most people I've met have either they're whacked and everything's demons everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Which is not true. Or they don't really know anything about dealing with demons and praying for people with a brain in their head, understanding that there's also physiological mental illness. Mm-hmm. There's also habitual sin patterns, yep. Addiction, chemical imbalance. Yep. There's all kinds of stuff. So, most of these folks, and they didn't know what the Bible said about music, as I said earlier. So most of them, when they just didn't have much to say as far as any content, in their arguments. So very rarely did anybody bother arguing with us about any of that stuff. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one last question here.
Sure.
Gosh, if I'm 60, you've got to be in your 70s. Please tell me
I'm
about
60,
your health.
I'm 68. I just turned 68 in January.
Okay, very good. Tell me about your health. How's Wendy? How's Jesus People USA, please?
My health, I've got a few aches and pains, but as far as I know, I can still hear a little bit out of one ear and somewhat out of the other. These are readers. Every now and then I actually wear a pair of bifocals, but I'm pretty good with 300 power readers. A few aches and pains, and that's about it at this point in time. Just saw the doctor the other day. Blood pressure is fabulous. I've been doing low carb keto, for years. Wendy and I both. So my health is, what is it? Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens. He said, if I'd have known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. I work out with weights from time to time, and exercise bands and dumbbells, and walk a lot. Wendy and I did a lot of walking today. My wife, Wendy, she got full on healed of diabetes some years ago. She was injecting insulin 3 times a day for 7 years. and a lot of grace there. She severe arthritis, had 2 complete hip replacements, 2 complete knee replacements, and several months back finished up with 2 complete cataract surgery for her eyes. So she's the bionic Wendy. She's rocking. She's doing great. She is at her best weight since we were married. Very slender. Man, oh man, she cooks well. Or I could stand to lose about 40 more pounds myself. But I mean, she's done so good. And her issues are more around arthritis, asthma. I've got a little bit of asthma, but not compared to her. So sometimes the asthma kicks in with her. Probably the biggest issue would be arthritis. She has dealt with leg cramps, muscle cramps all of her life. We've done it all. Trust me, we've that conversation with doctors and, try this, try that, try the other. So it's a little rough on occasion, but often she's good. Wendy doesn't hardly ever complain. And she's had a certain amount of chronic pain, oh gosh, for 25, 30 years, easy. So, mainly from this arthritis, right? So, but, she's tougher than I am. That's probably why God in his mercy hasn't let me go completely downhill yet. But it's pretty amazing. So yeah, we're blessed. Thanks for asking. Japusa, Jesus People USA, rocking. I could go on for days. I mean, there's so many ministries. Roughly 400 bed homeless shelter, 90 to 100 low income seniors on the top 3 floors of our main building. Tons of outreach in the street. We have a lot of homeless guys that they won't come in to a shelter. And some women under a bridge a couple blocks from here that we minister to constantly and help with food and clothing and all the rest. Lots of prison ministry going on. More and more people in the community are studying. I've been at it for a long time, but I haven't leaned on anybody. But there are other people that may end up doing more chaplain's work, as I've been doing for, probably 15, 20 years regularly. I've been involved in that, doing concerts and, Bible studies and sharing, interacting, sending DVDs into prisons and jails. We have a fair trade coffee shop, Gurr Records, Tone Zone recording studio, 2 pro studios that make up Tone Zone A and B. Tons and tons of ministry. We have people that join the community to serve and live with us for 6 months, a year, whatever. They make a commitment, they hang out, who don't know Jesus at all, but who think that the church are idiots. They don't relate to Christians at all. But because we've got, people with 6 hair colors and goths, and if you knew anything about Cornerstone Festival, it's just a total hodgepodge. It's just a mix of every subculture and culture you could imagine, and then some. A bunch of old hippies. I mean, one of our longtime members is going out turkey hunting in the morning. I wished him well. I mean, you can't even believe the subcultural mix. Of about 150 adults, probably around 80 kids, something like that. I don't know, that are actual full-time members of the community. But I'm blessed. What can I tell you? We're nuts. This is an absolute crazy zoo. I love it every day of my life. I walked in when I was 18, and I'm 68. So our leadership team is amazing. 7 incredible people. They let me go for 4 years. I said, guys, I really have a sense that maybe I need to do a whole lot more concerts, and especially getting into more the Cook County Jail here in Chicago, but also prisons around the state and around the country and so forth. 4 years, they made me stick around on that pastoral team. So I'm still a pastor here, but I don't have to show up. I'm not part of the leadership team. If I think something needs to be said, I say it. If they're needing the input, they ask. And when it's my turn to mop the floor, my team clean team 3. About every 5 weeks, I clean the bathrooms on the first floor and the men's and women's bathrooms in the evening. I open cans. I don't cook the spaghetti dinner for the whole community, but I open cans and serve. I mean, I take out the garbage. I do the dishes every night for our huge extended family on second floor there, where my wife and I and our eldest daughter and kids live. So no, it's a very unique, the intentional community is a very different lifestyle. It's a calling. We don't preach community, we preach Jesus. But today I was out in the street holding the sign of, actually 2 signs of 2 black folks that were shot and killed that should have never died. I've been an activist my whole life. So I make noise. And that scares some Christians, and I don't really care if it scares them or not. As we treat the least of these, whoever we consider the least of these to be, is how much we love Jesus. And one day we're going to all stand before him. And all of the political nonsense, all of the excuses, all of the rationale isn't going to mean nothing. So for me, it's like, okay, step up. Who do you consider the least of these? And what are you doing to serve them, to love them, to stand in solidarity with people that are hurting and broken and really don't have the options and the opportunities that I have? So I've been working at that for my whole life. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. You guys are a blessing. I'm glad we got to hang out some together.